chase after everything till everything I have lost. But then I wake in a green pasture beside the calmest of lakes, and I realize there's a love big enough to cover over all my mistakes. I walk through the valley of the shadow,
Well, good afternoon and welcome. If you're in the back, I encourage you to come find a seat. If you're watching online tonight, welcome to you. We are glad that you are with us this evening. Those of you in the room, those of you online, we welcome you in the name of Jesus. I'm going to pray for us as we start tonight. So come on in, find a seat. Let's pray. Oh, King Jesus, Lord of heaven and earth, what a gift tonight to gather together in your name, to be in this space. Lord, we know that you love us. You've shown that on the cross. And Lord, we thank you that you have been forming us to be your people, to live in this world for your name and for your glory. So we would ask, Holy Spirit, that tonight, this time and space would be yours, that you would lift up the name of Jesus in and through your people. And as we talk about things that are on your heart, God, Lord, may they become more and more a part of our heart too. We want to be a people that are in line with you and your values and the things that you're up to among us. So Lord, bless this time. Lord, may you receive glory in all that we do and say tonight. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, tonight, as we mentioned last Sunday, if you were with us last Sunday, is going to be a little bit different than a normal Sunday with us. We have the Jonah Project. Two representatives from there, Bindi and Michelina, that are here tonight. They're going to talk about human trafficking. And so I know that in addition to those that are a part of our regular reality community, we do have some other guests here tonight, some from some different churches. Welcome to you. We're glad that you're with us. Some others from our city as well. Welcome to you. We're glad that you are with us this evening. So a few announcements of things to keep in mind, and then we're going to dive right in and have the Jonah Project come and share. Normally, on a normal night, we would sing first. We're just going to jump in and have the folks from the Jonah Project share. We're going to have a chance to have some question and answer time. Then we're going to sing at the end and take communion together before having a dinner that you're all invited to, whether you knew it or not. There's a free Mexican food dinner from Ramirez that we'll have in the Commons. Get a chance to eat some food, good food around the table, and ask some further questions about what that may look like for knowing and understanding the Jonah Project and being a part of what God is doing in and through them too. So a few announcements of things, especially for those that are newer to the building and the space. Bathrooms, ladies' restroom is right across the hallway here in the back. The men's restroom is by the front door where you first maybe walked in if you came in through the front door. And then also at the end of this hallway that's right here, if you could walk through that door or around, there's a room at the end here that has a TV, it has the sound coming in as well, has some sofas, it has some toys, has a baby changing table. You can use that if you need to for your little one. We do have Reality Kids happening downstairs for our little ones tonight. If you are someone who's a part of our reality community and you want to worship the Lord financially, again, we're not a church that passes the plate. We have two ways you can do that. One's a black box at the front door there, or you can give through our website, which is realityolympia.com. But it's really important for you to know, worship for us is not a have to, it's a get to. It's a response to the gospel. It's a response to what Jesus has done for us. God has given himself fully to us in Christ, and so we are a generous people in response, and I can guarantee we can never outgive what God has given to us. So we invite you to worship through that as well tonight. I think that's it as far as announcements go. So let's go ahead and move into our time tonight and having the Jonah Project share. I'm not going to take up their time tonight and share a ton myself. I want to make sure that our wonderful friends have plenty of that. And they're going to introduce themselves in a moment and have a chance to share their story and their work. But I do want you to know that what you're going to hear tonight, I think, is hard, challenging, good, beautiful, difficult kingdom of God activity. And I know that, at least for me, when I think of or when I hear of human trafficking, I often think of far, far away. And that's just not the case. And it's really easy for us to go through life and to go through our days and to do work and home and life routines and not realize all that's happening even in our own community. So that's one of the reasons why we have the Jonah Project here today, is to bring awareness to some of the places where maybe we've been blind to or just unaware of what's happening around us. And that we want to be a people that keep our eyes and ears open to what God is doing here. As a church, we're a community of disciples. and we're following Jesus. We're asking him to form us and to shape us into the image of Jesus, always for the sake of the world. And I know that even earlier this year, I asked and challenged our church to be a Proverbs 31 church. It was many months ago that we talked about that, but I know Proverbs 31 at times has a reputation of, Proverbs 31 being the Proverbs 31 woman. But before you get into the conversation around being a Proverbs 31 woman, this is Proverbs 31 verse 8. It says, "Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy." And that's the kind of church that we want to be, are those that open our mouth for justice and for righteousness and to defend those that may not have a voice. Also in Psalm 82, which I was just reading this morning, Psalm 82 verse 3 says, "Give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked." And so as those that want to follow Jesus in our city, in our community, we are always trying to ask, how can we be that kind of people? How can we seek justice and righteousness and love and defend and speak up for those that need a voice and need a hand and need love and need compassion and need people to stand with them? So not everyone can do everything, but everyone can do something. And so we're hoping tonight that maybe we'll find out what that something may be, maybe individually, maybe as a church, maybe as different churches, maybe as different people partnering in different ways in our city. This issue matters, and we want to be obedient. As I said last week, there's no master plan as to what this means for our church. I don't know, but we were asking for God to show us how can we be faithful to respond to the city, the needs of our city around us. And this may be one way we can be a part of that. So please join me in welcoming the Jonah Project to Olympia.
The problem.
There's an overwhelming need that people aren't even aware of here, just right here in the backyard. Just the sexual exploitation of minors is it's inexcusable. It's not acceptable, and everyone needs to open their eyes and look in their own backyard.
We've helped hundreds of people this year, and one of those was a teenage girl who was being physically abused by her family. She was talked to the police about it, but she did tell us. The Jonah Project team and I got to support her through advocacy and meeting basic needs. She later told us that she was so thankful we could help her. She was really happy that God told her to tell us her situation and that we were the reason that she was alive.
Just about anyone that I've told about the Jonah Project and really explained what they're doing, they think that's a problem of a big city, or they think that's a problem of other countries. And to find out it's happening here in the Lilac City, I think is an eye-opener for a lot of people.
Jonah's around for the long haul as well as daybreak, and I think we are, and we're on the same path to save young lives, especially vulnerable children.
Our 24/7 resource line is available all the time for anyone to call who's in need. Our partner organizations have said that when anyone else, they could get a hold of us because of this phone, and we could be available to them to serve clients how they needed. If we weren't, that client probably would have had to go back to their traumatic situation they were coming from.
So our first client that we sent to Jonah House had basically had a horrible family situation. She had experienced, homelessness as a young 14-year-old, and was in vulnerable situations and was nervous to go home, did not want to go home. And that's how Bindi came into the facility, met with the counselors, and said, please, saying, we have a place for some of the girls. And at the time, Jonah House was able just to provide her a home. I realized, wow, they can provide care for these clients when they leave Daybreaks.
We didn't set out to start a nonprofit. We began serving youth and discovered kids were being manipulated and abused. With little resources in the area for survivors of human trafficking, we decided to start the Jonah Project to support those who were falling through the cracks.
When we first heard about the Jonah Project, it was different. And it was kind of one of those things that nobody wants to talk about. Nobody wants to sit and have one of these tough conversations about what's going on in the city. And immediately, that made us feel like we wanted to do whatever we could. The volunteers that I've met, the people that are involved in the day-to-day operations, the staff, they just have the grit that it takes to be in these situations. And we need somebody that's willing to go into the fire, put on the shield, go into these places that are seedy and dirty and scary, and someone to say, here I am, send me, Lord, to say, you don't have to live like this anymore, and to provide the next steps. And if we're all on guard and we're all saying, not in my backyard, and we can make a difference.
I'm Aaron, founder of the Jonah Project. Whether you've just started learning about human trafficking or have been in the fight with us for a while, I'd like to thank you for listening. More than 6 years ago, we began a conversation with you, the community, about human trafficking. At that time, there was very little resource and even less awareness. So we rolled up our sleeves and we went to work, holding awareness rallies, teaching in health and leadership classes, and of course, reaching out to victims and relocating survivors. We opened Spokane's first 24-hour resource line, first safe houses, and continue to build a network of safe homes for survivors today. In fact, since 2014, the Jonah team has served almost 400 women and children through direct advocacy, walking alongside them toward freedom. While teaching at universities like Gonzaga and Washington State, as well as local high schools, shelters, and churches, the Jonah team provides a lifeline to many trying to escape cycles of abuse and the modern-day slave trade. The notion that we could restore the most marginalized people in the world without leverage is no longer just an idea. Today, working alongside DHS and other federal agencies, partnering with schools, churches, and families, the Jonah team continues to seek and save the lost. More people in our community are aware than ever before, and more people are taking a stand to fight human trafficking. We couldn't have come this far without you, but there's so much more work to do. And we'll need you, our community, to stand firm with us, to be a light in the darkness that so many victims and survivors are waiting to see. With your support, the Jonah Project won't quit until every last one of those women and children are brought home. Thank you.
And we're good. Awesome. Hi, you guys. Good evening. My name's Michelina. I'm the lead advocate with the Jonah Project. I graduated from Whitworth University studying Christian theology and teaching English to speakers of other languages. I began working with Jonah 5 years ago as a volunteer when I got back from traveling the world on a trip called the World Race. And we did anti-sex trafficking work in Nepal, the Philippines, in Central America. So when I found the Jonah Project in Spokane, I was absolutely in love with how much compassion and intentionality the work is done with, and how each person that they help / we help is cared for as if they were the only person existing in the whole world. And as a volunteer, when I first started, I wasn't just another person or another volunteer, but I was welcomed as an active team member and am now on full-time staff with Jonah. So that's a little bit about me, and now I'll pass it to Bindi.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us. This is a really big deal, so we appreciate you being a part of our story as well. So as we like to say at the project, welcome. You're a part of the Jonah Project now. My name is Bindi. I am a co-founder, as you heard of my husband earlier speak a little bit about the beginnings of Jonah. So I'm just going to get to know you guys a little bit by giving you a little bit of background on how this came to be, because you can imagine what was going through our minds, what was our experience to lead us to follow God in this way into some of the dark places that we've been. But to encourage you, Our work is heavy, the subject is hard, but we have so much joy in delivering God's love and compassion to people every day. So don't worry too much about us, but please be praying for us. Okay, so a little bit of background. At the time, my husband was a baseball coach at a local high school, and he started serving the kids and really being there for them, asking them about their lives and wanting to make sure that they were being taken care of, all their needs, clothes, food, things of that nature. Well, one day he came home and told me, hey, babe, some of the kids don't even have shoes. And I said, wait, what do you mean? Like they don't have a pair of cleats or they don't have a pair of shoes? And he said, nope, no shoes, babe. So this really broke our heart. And we went to the school and said that it really matters to us what's happening for the kids, especially in the at-risk neighborhoods. And that with a church, we were coming from a church about this size, exactly. And we said, we know that everyone at our church would be wanting to care about what's going on for those kids, and that we could easily provide food, shoes, and some really great relationships and offerings in the community for these kids to be a part of. So we went to the school, and we said, this is what we have. And at that time, the project didn't even have a name. Myself and 2 other volunteers, my husband, met with the administration and said, we're really here for the kids and not just for coffee and donuts. The miracle part is that the school said, absolutely, I think you guys are serious, and we'd love to kind of share some of our hardest caseloads with you. So they gave us a list of 12 kids that first semester, and we began building relationship, really sharing life with them, and even connecting with their families to see how we could serve. And then the sad part is that 2 out of those 12 kiddos we learned were being trafficked. And it was the most horrendous stories that I had ever heard. And considering that I had been a social worker and a teacher with at-risk populations in Spokane for already 10 years at that time, it was really jaw-dropping information that I was hearing from the kids. But we didn't stop at that. Just knowing that God was with us through all of it, I began making the phone calls and doing the heavy work to make sure that those kids were immediately taken out of their dangerous situations and brought into a safe setting, and we began individualized care plans for each of those kiddos. So we fell into the work for sure, and then just kept on doing what God asked us to do. So like Paul said, it was a story of obedience and reverence for what God was doing, not only for the children involved, but for the people that were serving them. So that's a little bit of background on why we're called the Jonah Project, because just as God asked Jonah to go serve in Nineveh, and he did not want to do that. That was real scary. That was real dark. That seemed way overwhelming. But with, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke, but really, we just followed God and were obedient, and he continued to take care of us and open the right doors at the right time. And he provided us the mentors, the professional connections in the community to just make organically and naturally in order for this work to be done and to be done well. So we are now the voice for trafficked survivors, but really all people who are being marginalized. So that's just a little bit of background, but thank you.
Slide. So, to define sex trafficking, it is slavery and not prostitution, especially in anyone under 18. You cannot be a prostitute or choosing to sell your body. So anyone who's being sexually exploited under 18 is automatically a trafficking survivor. It's defined as force, fraud, or coercion. So just like Paul was talking about earlier, a lot of what we think of sex trafficking is maybe the movie Taken, or really big brothels in countries that are not America is stereotypically what we hear. But what's actually happening here in this area especially is the manipulation and the coercion is what's involved most often. And sadly, intimate partners and family members are the most likely to recruit most of the time. So some examples of just our clients that we work with. These are all based on real stories. It is as obvious as someone being kidnapped and absolutely abducted and taken off the streets, but that's a very, very small percentage of who we're working with. Most of it is going to be manipulation, like I said, and it's going to be a boyfriend convincing a girlfriend that she needs to pay him rent for living in his space by having sex with him and his friends, or convincing a little sister's friend that in order to keep using the drugs that this bad person has insisted on them using and has now gotten them addicted to, that in order to pay for those drugs, they need to continue those acts with his friends or the people they're bringing in. It's often to pay for basic needs, food or a cell phone or shelter, like rent costs, like I said. In essence, it's turning human beings into a dollar sign, and it's saying you do not exist, but you exist to make money for myself. And on average, we're talking about $200,000 a year made off one girl, because you can sell them over and over and over. You can see it's a $50 billion industry worldwide.
Thank you. Okay, so moving into statistics, more reasons why we should all contribute to this fight in some way. In 2008, the first study was taken in Spokane to estimate total trafficking victims to be between 500 and 600. So I always ask the audience, do we believe that this number has gone down, or do you think it's gone up? Up, of course, up. And that was 2008. That seems like ages ago. And then especially with the current situation with COVID, we get the question, have things gotten worse or better? Worse, yes, absolutely. The amount of time that children and people are spending online is a lot. And that is a place where people are being victimized and often lured, definitely online. So also we have up here, 1 in 7 runaways were reportedly sex trafficked, and 74% of them have been in foster care. So we really try hard to work with CPS in our area, and we hope the same can happen here as well, because our foster kiddos, CPS kiddos, are heavily affected by this, and often their parents as well. Within 72 hours of being homeless, most will be solicited for sex. And this is matching all the information from our true life cases of the children and women that we serve. Homelessness means, of course, they would have no permanent home. They're living in shelters, sleeping on streets, and couch surfing. (11 to 12) is the average age of a child being taken into sexual slavery, or sometimes their first situation where they had been abused. But there are times, of course, where they were, oftentimes they have accounts of sexual abuse in their past early childhood years as well. 15 is the average age of a victim that Jonah Project works with, and we've helped as young as 9-year-olds and as old as 53-year-olds with disabilities. So there's never a time where we don't serve the person that's giving us a call on the phone or that's being referred to us, because again, we're really paying attention to whoever God is delivering to us through the email, through the phone call. We're gonna find the solution for them and continue to connect with them. This last stat is, it's a heavy one. The first time I read it, my husband was like, hey, so now I'm reading that it's only 7 years is the average lifespan of a person once they've been recovered from the crime or from the trauma. And I said, gosh, that just doesn't sound accurate. You really think so? And he said, well, we hope we don't find out with any of our clients. But we started the project in 2014 when I spoke to you about one of those, or two of those clients. And we sadly lost one of those young ladies in 2020, just at the beginning of COVID in June of 2020. Not to say, like I said, she was recovered, she was cared for, she gained a community of people that loved her. She spoke at City Hall for her, about her story, and she was an intimate part of our lives and a whole community of people. So she did find wellness. She did find a real paying job. She went back to school and she graduated with her AA. But we lost her to her addiction. It's not an easy thing, and as you guys may already know, that recovery is an everyday battle. And due to COVID and the restrictions of how we all had to be so separated, that's what happened. We just lost her to her addiction, and But I will leave you with the idea of the fact that she accepted Jesus. In her journey with us and asking us why we do what we do, we got to share with her the good news. And so we've had many awesome conversations that we can think back on about Jesus and what that meant to her. So yes, so sadly, that stat it's a true one, and it's a real one, and I'm not sure why God had to kind of deliver us that truth in that way, but we continue to have confidence in what we do. So next slide. Here's a picture of that one of our advocates painted of Diamond, and she wouldn't mind us sharing her story. Yeah.
This was the last time that I spent with Diamond. We went to a rose garden, and we were walking around the flowers, and we sat on the grass for a while, and we were looking at the clouds and kind of like, you know, when you pick out what shapes they are and what they look like to you. And she said, this is crazy. I never used to do this when I was on drugs or in the life or whatever, but I'm so glad I get to do normal stuff like this now. So this is a memory from that day to share with you all. A couple more situations just to give you an idea of what trafficking looks like in this area. Two girls we worked with a while ago in a very wealthy area of Spokane. They graduated high school. Their moms paid for them to have an apartment on their own, and they began acting in what is very normal to young people these days, interacting, meeting people online, making new friends. They went to a party with some guys that they had been spending time with, and started hanging out, started drinking, and then began dancing after the guys encouraged them to dance a little bit. Some pictures were taken. It kind of escalated. They were asked to take off some clothes. More pictures were taken. And then they were quickly leveraged and told that in order to start up their modeling career that these men had started for them, they needed to pay back thousands and thousands of dollars. And if they didn't pay that back, the pictures would be released to everyone in their community, including their family. So the girls didn't tell anyone, and they began working for these men who were using and abusing and sexually exploiting them, and eventually got in contact with us, and we were able to guide them out of that situation so they were no longer leveraged. But that's what we mean when we talk about kind of the manipulation involved. It's a lot of fear tactics. It's a lot of, no, you're my girlfriend. This is what we do. Come on, this is how we act. And if you don't have more positive people around you telling you that that's not how things should be done and no one should ever be treating you that way, you don't know what else to do. So another situation, I wrote tomorrow on there because this is actually from last week, but last week we met with a 12-year-old at a middle school who the counselors called us and said, hey, we're pretty sure that the mom is trafficking this girl out of a hotel near them. So you can be praying for this 12-year-old. So we went and met with her, and all of the signs point to the fact that trafficking is happening. So because she is 12 and because the family is very cautious around authorities, we have to be very careful about how we approach it. But these are situations that we're getting calls weekly of, hey, we think this is going on with this kid, or someone's in the hospital and just told us of this horrific incident that happened right here in this neighborhood or in this area. It's not a yearly thing. It's happening consistently. So just a quick exercise for us. If you guys wouldn't mind raising your hand if you've ever felt anxiety and you didn't really know why. You kind of just didn't feel right and you didn't know why. If you could raise your hand. Me too. Raise your hand if you've ever felt shame or fear in a really, really heavy way. Raise your hand if someone that you've trusted has ever broken your trust or lied to you. Yeah. These are all experiences that our survivors have and at-risk kiddos have, and this is part of the human experience. This is what we experience together as humans, and that goes to say that nothing disqualifies us from helping these people that have been through absolute horrors. Whether you have yourself or whether you haven't, it doesn't matter. God uses everyone, and just like we were talking about earlier, it is not saying yes to an entire piece and an entire picture. God only ever asks us to say yes to the part that is in front of us that we can do. So it is about connecting with that human, and that is how we run our project, and that is what's been successful, is finding it inside yourself to say, I haven't been through what you have been through, but I can see that you're hurting, and I know what that's like, and I want to do this life with you and make that better. These are a couple pictures of our clients with you. That's me in the Hawaiian shirt. At a local high school, we do hot chocolate outreaches in the morning and get to know kiddos that way, and kind of just see who God brings to us, open for connection. And then, of course, we're always encouraging healthy ways to connect with our kids, so going on walks or getting coffee or going grocery shopping and learning how to do practical skills, all ways that we can connect with our kids.
Okay, so a little bit about how people fall into these kinds of traumas, or what makes them vulnerable. So if we start over here in the blue circle, individual risk factors. They include history of child abuse, neglect or maltreatment, homelessness, runaways, throwaways, LGBTQ, history of being in systems involved in the juvenile justice, criminal justice, foster care, or just simply stigma and discrimination. Relationship risk factors would include family conflict, disruption, or dysfunction. Community risk factors may include peer pressure, social norms, social isolation, COVID, gang involvement, under-resourced schools, neighborhoods, and communities. And then even larger than that, societal risk factors is lack of awareness of commercial sexual exploitation and sex trafficking and how it works, and the sexualization of children, and lack of resources and public resources that are available to clients are just very much lacking.
Some possible physical signs that someone is being trafficked that you should take pictures of if you would like a reminder, or we can get these to you later. These aren't necessarily signs. One of these signs will not tell you that someone is being trafficked. It usually is going to take some human interaction to kind of find out if that person is safe, but these are really big indicators. So cigarette burns or excessive bruising, especially choke mark bruising on the neck. Tattoos and branding, that's going to be maybe on the wrist or the collarbone, maybe a butterfly with a $sign in it, or someone's name, a normal-looking tattoo, but then something's off about it, either a $sign or a name. And this is to remind that person when they look in the mirror or look at their hands that they don't belong to themselves, they belong to others. It's a form of branding, just like cattle. Respiratory infections, malnutrition or dehydration, unhealthy weight loss, unexplained scarring, bald patches, talking about STDs or sexual trauma or unwanted pregnancies, and then head or mouth injuries. So these are all signs that mean even if trafficking is not going on, something unhealthy is probably going on. But the thing about especially the weight loss and the dehydration and bald patches is sometimes those can easily be attributed to other like diseases or circumstances going on. We had a couple of our clients at a local high school who they said, oh, they're losing weight because they're anorexic. They have an eating disorder and need to go to an eating disorder facility. And we said, yes, that is true. But after doing life with this young girl, we realized, well, she has an eating disorder because she's being trafficked and she's not being fed. So that's how tricky and interlaced all of this is together, is it's never just the one thing. Some other telling signs, more behavioral signs, dating an older guy or older boyfriend, or if mom has a lot of boyfriends circling in and out. Living situation is often changing, or school is often changing. School attendance is suffering, and maybe they're all of a sudden maybe falling asleep in class, or maybe they're just not at school at all. New or increased drug and alcohol use. New or significantly higher levels of depression, anxiety, or fear. New or expensive clothes, jewelry, makeup, and cars. This is a really big one because the pimps, traffickers, bad guys or girls are going to use these things to kind of love bomb them and say, well, you wouldn't leave me though because I bought you all those nice things and I got you that Michael Kors purse and I got you this nice perfume. So sometimes we'll see our girls we're serving and they're looking pretty rough except for a really nice wallet or super fancy whatever, jewelry or something like that. So if you see that, something's off. A second cell phone or even a third cell phone is really, really common with people who are being trafficked. They'll have a work phone and a personal phone. Tattoos and branding, we talked about that, and then gang involvement. Homelessness and gang involvement are very, very high signs that trafficking is occurring. I know homelessness is a really big topic in this area, and I know your church actually has had a lot of involvement with the homeless community, and that is such a red flag that trafficking is occurring, because when your basic need of housing isn't met, you are so susceptible to whoever is going to come along and say, well, yeah, you can crash at my place, you can stay with me, why don't you just come over here? And then all of a sudden, all the strings are attached of the rent that they have to pay to catch up on. So a quick true or false for you guys. A student at my school or my kid's school, male or female, cannot be a victim of human trafficking because he or she is obviously not being held against their will because they're at school today. Thumbs down for false, thumbs up for true. Yep, totally correct. A lot of the clients that we've served have held normal day jobs at grocery stores, or have been at school every day, or have had some piece of regular life to them, some piece that we all might be interacting with, except for the fact that when they went home, they were not in control of their own bodies. And just a side story with that, going back to our physical signs of trafficking, a few weeks ago, I was at Walmart getting some groceries, and I was very tired from work. I was very, quote, off duty, as if we can be off duty. And I see this young girl, maybe 16, who had a very rough appearance except for a very, very fancy purse, and she had bruising on her neck in a choke mark pattern. And I said, I'm really tired, maybe I could just, and God said, I said, oh, okay, I can do this. So I approached her, started talking with her casually, and basically just found out if she was safe or not, gave her the Jonah Project number to try to convince her to get some help, because it looked like she was in a pretty rough situation. But that just goes to show we're not off duty, and now that you guys know the signs of what someone who's being trafficked might look like, you get to act on that. And you never know who God's gonna bring in front of you. And we are always here as support for you to call and ask questions and say, hey, this person is sitting in Denny's or this coffee shop and they look a little rough. What should I do? We're happy to guide you in that, but we don't get to look away anymore because we know this is happening and we know what this looks like.
Here's a little picture and story of celebration for this young lady. And again, we have her permission to share this amazing story of recovery for her. She's originally from Spokane, and she was diagnosed with some disabilities earlier in her life. So she turned 18, and she told her family, hey, so I met a group of people, and they're offering me a job in Minnesota. And her family said, oh, this doesn't sound safe. Why would you leave us? We love you. She comes from a great home. So Rebecca at the time just made the sad decision of going ahead and following that group of people, thinking that she was going to find her independence, and quickly realized that they had a plan for her, that they were not her friends, they were not even an employer, they were traffickers, and they had her kept up in basically an apartment for 4 years. 4 years, and her family had not heard from her in those years. So her family had just really given up hope and just given it to the Lord of, we hope she's safe somewhere. Till one day, Rebecca made it to a shelter, and the caseworker took a minute to ask her really how she got there and what was her story. And she explained that she's supposed to be back home with her family in Spokane. And the caseworker took a minute to Google us, called our line, and said, we have a survivor here, and she says she's from Spokane. Could you guys help with this? And I said, absolutely. And so from the minute that phone call came, which was actually like at 2 o'clock in the morning, we dug in, and I got to speak with Rebecca on the phone. I helped educate the caseworker on what this looks like for a trafficked person and how to keep the facility safe and the person safe in the meantime before we could send representatives from the Jonah Project and her family to go pick her up in Minnesota. So, amazing story that we love to celebrate, because this is her 3-year celebration party of being recovered, back home safe with her family, and now she has our wonderful community at the project to love and support her through the next steps in her life. But when we got her back from Minnesota, she was a shell of a human being. She could hardly speak, she could hardly eat, and she had forgotten everything that she was before this happened to her. And so we just know this is just another great story of how, with everyone's support in the community and her family behind her, she's now looking for a job. She loves to ride horses and gets to go to the mall with us and do healthy, normal things of her that someone her age should be doing. So just want to share that with you guys. And Rebecca's story really reminds me of a classic grooming situation. So here's a little bit of education on that. The definition of grooming is to prepare or train someone for a particular purpose or activity. So all traffickers, no matter if they're, someone at your local high school or someone who's a higher level trafficker, they're basically targeting their victim. They're going to figure out who shall we groom next. They target victims who have some noticeable vulnerabilities, emotional neediness, low self-confidence, or economic stress. Now, when I think of the people that I know and love, most of us fall into some type of one of those categories. So really, it could be your neighbor, your coworker, your friend, someone who's just recently been in a divorce, or just someone who just doesn't have enough money for the basic things that they need in life. Then they're moving on to gaining trust and information from the victim. They're obtaining information, and this can be done through casual conversations, online conversations, in-person meetings, and traffickers often mix well with other adults. So it can be people of leadership, it can be other high school students who really display like they've got this and they're very popular. Then moving into filling a need. So the information gained allows the trafficker to fill a need in the victim's life, making the victim dependent on them in some way, buying gifts, being a friend, being a love relationship, or buying soft drugs and alcohol to begin with. And then there's a great quote. From someone. Up until this point, they had never tried to touch me. They had not made me ever uncomfortable or ever feel unsafe or that they could harm me. And this process can be like within 2 minutes, that grooming process, 20 minutes, or up to 2 years. So traffickers, it just depends what their goal is with the person that they're targeting. Next comes the isolation. The traffickers create times to be alone with the victim, and the trafficker will also begin to have a major role in the victim's life, pick them up from school, buy them their things, feed them in the beginning. And they attempt to distance the victim from friends and family. So they tell them, I know you best. I love you most. Your best friend really doesn't understand you. Your mom really doesn't understand you. They don't understand how smart you are, how brilliant you are, but I do, so you should trust me. So the abuse begins. The trafficker begins claiming that a service must be repaid, whether money spent on cigarettes or drugs, car rides, mobile phones, and in most cases, the trafficker demands sex as a payment for such services. Or they just begin manipulating the victim into thinking that they're in love with that person, so then sex is just natural after that. Here's a quote. I trusted them. They were my friends as I saw it, until one night my main perpetrator raped me quite brutally as well in front of a number of people. And oftentimes this is the part where people get videotaped, photographed, and then leveraged, threatened, their lives and their families' lives too. So you can imagine that just immediately sends someone into shame and fear instead of telling a safe person about what just happened. And then they maintain control. In many cases, the trafficker maintains control of the victim through threats, violence, fear, or blackmail. And the quote, well, if I didn't go out and see them, they're going to get my mom and they're going to hurt her too. So, and these are very factual, true to what's happening on the streets. This is just in summary. Again, the pimp or trafficker is building an emotional connection with the potential victim to gain their trust for the purposes of sexual abuse or exploitation. Like Michelina was talking about, they use subtle love bombing, or it can be very extreme. Just depends on their strategy. Job offers of modeling, dancing, or for a better life. We hear this all the time. It is filling a need, love, money, shelter, etc. And in the court system, this is all this emotional manipulation that occurs in trafficking. It's really hard to prove because most people aren't documenting it at that stage. And then afterward, it just looks as if they are willing to comply with the trafficker's requests. And it's just it's a scenario of their word against the victims. Thanks.
Take a breath. This is heavy stuff. If you know all about this already, awesome, great job, but I think it's new for a lot of us. So if it sounds really confusing and complicated and with lots of layers, it's because it is. So take a breath. We get to talk about some happier things now and some positive things that we've seen as Jonah working with our friends. This is an artistic rendition of one of our girls that we work with, and now we get to share the picture with you because a little artistic rendition with her fairy wings over here. But the protective factors that we encourage always are relationships, including family stability. So we're not only working with the client, but any positive person in their life that we can support is also supporting them. Supporting a safe social network, connection to God's story and what that means for them. So we are not a Christian ministry, but we are Jesus followers. And the question most of the time will come up with the people we're serving. Why are you doing what you're doing? How do you do what you're doing? And we always get to share our testimony. We always get to share about God's power in that. And when you have someone who feels like a shell of a person and so broken and empty, and you get to say, but Jesus is always wanting good things for you and is always there for you to talk with. And you always get to talk with him. He's always on your side. He loves you so much and you have a purpose. Why wouldn't they want to take that? So it's pretty cool how we get to share that with them and connect them to a greater purpose and story of healing. We're always encouraging school connectedness, education on human trafficking. If you know what's going on, you're much less likely to be trafficked or to let the people around you be trafficked. Tangible resources like safe shelter and food and meeting those basic needs, or teaching them how to find those basic needs so they don't have to be asking an unsafe person for them. Setting future goals. It was very surprising to me in the first bit of working with Jonah how much I would meet these lovely clients and ask them, what do you like to do for fun? What are you excited for next year? What do you want to be when you grow up? Normal questions, I thought. But they have been in fight or flight mode for so long that often they haven't even thought about those things, and they don't know what color they like. They don't know what they like to do. They have never thought about what they want to be when they grow up because they are assuming they'll be dead within a year, and that's just the circle and the people they're around. So getting to work with them and training when I train my advocates to ask what they're excited for in a few weeks. Ask, well, do you think you like this movie more or this movie more? And encouraging them to make choices and take ownership in their life. This is all part of this grand healing process. Of course, limited and alcohol drug exposure, we work a lot with recovery and addiction recovery support services. Staying safe online. This is what we especially encourage anyone to teach our young people, especially our young people, but not just our young people. It's very easy for people online to see your profile and then to begin that grooming process when they can easily see that you're really into Frank Ocean or Doja Cat or Michael Jackson or whoever, and start that conversation and begin from there. Online is a great place to make connections, but it's also very easy for unsafe people to pop in if your profiles are not private. Teaching our kids to not give out phone numbers and addresses online. It doesn't matter if they're gonna send you a CD or a free this or whatever. This is not safe. Limiting personal information, date of birth, where you go to school, where you live, and tagging your location makes you very vulnerable. And so it's all about spread the love and joy in your life on social media, but not putting those key things and then keeping it so that only the people you know are looking at that. Once it's out there, you can't take it back. And this is me. Who we are as Jonah Project. If you haven't figured it out by now, we are all about compassion and love and healing. And we serve survivors of human trafficking as well as at-risk women and children. Young men is also in there. Anyone who, if it is a young man who has been trafficked, or we've worked with especially vulnerable young men before, so tag that on. We are encouraging an individual path to healing and supporting our clients with resources so they do not fall into trafficking, or helping them in their healing process after the trauma has already occurred. We fill in the gaps of social services. We are the catch-all of social services. Anyone calling our resource line that is in Bindi's purse right now, we're not gonna turn away. We're always gonna make sure that they are followed through to get the resource they need. Even if that's saying, let's see, I'm trying to think of something random to tell you guys lately, but where's the local food bank? How can I get this? What about this? I need this. And we'd say, we're not the best resource for you in that, but you should call these guys. And then we check in with them after they call, because we want to make sure that they get through to the number and they get through and they feel supported. Or whether it's, I need to get my cat neutered in order to stay in my low-income apartment. So before my 9 a.m. business class in college, I drove this young lady to a low-income vet clinic so that she could get her cat fixed so that she wouldn't be homeless. Because if she's going to be homeless again, she's probably going to be trafficked again. So it's these random things like this that come with just doing life with people that makes up the Jonah Project. We focus on education, advocacy, and relocation. And what we found in the past 7+ years of working is these are the 3 pillars that are ending trafficking, fighting trafficking, and working for us. So education is this. You are a part of our education pillar right now, because it is proactive and preventative teachings to schools, churches, businesses, small groups, anyone who is welcoming us to teach about what this looks like and how they can be a part. Because if we're teaching in local high schools and middle schools and we're saying, this is what the bad guys are looking for, you need to watch out for you and your friends, then we're stopping trafficking right there. And a lot of times the students jump on board too, and they're saying, wait, this is happening to people my age? No, I don't think so. And they're asking us, how can we help? How can we help? How can we help? And it's this education that is going to prevent it from happening in the first place. Advocacy, another picture of one of our sweet clients we work with. It's advocacy with compassion. And that's what leads us to our clients telling us things like, you saved my life, or you are a life jacket for souls, and I don't know where I would be if I didn't have you guys. It's having these long conversations, sometimes at very inconvenient times, but trauma does not stay 9 to 5. Trauma is as it comes to them, and so we want to be as available as we can. But it's helping people realize that, no, you don't have to stay in that house where he is asking for sex, for payment, for rent. You have a choice, and the amount of times that someone has said, wait, Michelina, I have other options? We say, yes, of course, you always have other options. We will help you find those options right now, and you don't have to stay there one more day. We become the people that they call for celebrations, and kiddos that Aaron and Bindi met with 7-8 years ago are now calling and saying, hey, I'm happy and healthy and having a baby. Will you come celebrate the baby's first birthday party with me, or my graduation of college? And we'll say, okay, great. What do you need? Do you need food? Do you need advocacy? And they say, no, I'm good. I just miss you and want to hang out with you. So they're inviting us into these celebrations, and sometimes they are calling to say that they need stuff because they know that we came through for them 7 years ago and that we're still going to come through for them.
And this is the last pillar of some of what we do. So relocation, a little bit about the story of Rebecca. That's a prime example of a cross-country relocation that we did. But we also do just within our city, and we have done across the borders relocation twice. So again, that is with assistance from Department of Homeland Security and local law enforcement when we do those types of operations. But in general, it can look like a lot of these things where we're providing safe housing, sending them to another healing program across the country that's better fit for them, or providing them an opportunity where they're welcomed into a host house by potentially some families like you guys. And truly our goal in sending someone to safety in another area from where they've been trafficked is to provide harm reduction. So we may not be able to solve everything right away because healing takes time. But we will start beginning that process by getting them safely to where they need to be. The last part is that we have up here Freedom Railroad. So Freedom Railroad is something that Jonah Project has trademarked as a way to describe our process of when we get a referral for a client from an agency, a church, a hospital, and we begin working with them. I fill out a specific form for them, and I send it through a system called the National Trafficking Shelter Alliance. And that agency sends me back options for healing programs for them across the country. And then Jonah Project provides the transportation, the coaching. We are their safe people through that whole experience. And then even as they leave, we, and they're doing much better by that time. So that's a little bit about what Freedom Railroad is. And it's really exciting because you guys are also a part of the Freedom Railroad. Just the fact that potentially we could have unsafe kiddos or women from Olympia now go to Spokane for services is amazing and awesome, and vice versa. So this is what's happening here, where we can safely send people back and forth to wherever they need to be. Volunteer. So you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, Bindi just threw a whole bunch of stuff at us. What am I supposed to do? So if you guys order from Amazon, please do click on us through Amazon Smiles, and a little small portion of whatever you buy will come to the project, because we do need to keep gas in our cars. And just to be really transparent with you guys, there are only 3 staff members. They were barely able to hire me 4 years ago. Before this, we were doing the work for free. And we would still be doing it even if the money doesn't come, but we'd like to serve more people. So that's where your funding would help us, really, is to have more amazing staff members like Michelina who teach and preach and take care of people all over town. And so in our backyard, volunteers are asked, would you be able to do a monthly food pickup at our local food bank? Would you be able to help us post interesting articles and information on what the city needs through social media? Maybe you're a graphic artist that could help us with a brand new slideshow. Advocacy, again, if you're a hands and feet kind of person, making meals, giving people rides. Administrative help, I need lots of help with that because I'm also a case manager, so you can imagine what our crazy life looks like. It's a little bit of everything. Asking local businesses, churches, schools, again, to start fundraising projects, and we can be super creative. We'll find something for everybody, whether you're making jewelry and you have a personal business, or you have, Papa Murphy's down the street. So, and yeah, so basically, please take a seat at the table, no matter what that might be for you. And feel free to email us with any questions, concerns, big or small. We answer all those calls, whether it's a question about your children and your local school, or your city and larger, so.
Yeah, so most of those things on there actually can all be done not in Spokane. A lot of our work is remote, and so if anything was pulling on your heart, please talk to us. We've already had some clients come from Olympia, and we've either transported them on Freedom Railroad to Spokane and worked with them since then, or just been connecting with service providers in this area. But It starts how it started in the beginning, and it starts with connecting with schools and maybe young people, or maybe a trafficking survivor at a homeless shelter, that a social service might call and say, hey, this woman is going through a lot. She would love to just go get some tacos and feel that someone in the world cares about her. And that's what Jonah Project is. That's where we start. We can do the heavy lifting with the case managing, but if your heart is for this and you're wanting to work with people or even behind the scenes, we would love to have you join. So we are going to open up for any questions that we have right now. And then again, we'll be here for dinner after. So if it's maybe a more specific question to you and your heart or something like that, if you can, stay and ask us at dinner. But anything now, please shout it out, bring it on. There's a lot to take in.
Can you talk a little bit about how you began to connect with Olympia?
The phone calls, the resource line.
Yeah, it was very odd, actually. In 1 week, we had 3 phone calls, all from different entities in Olympia. And let's see, one of them was a social service provider who said, hey, I Googled human trafficking support and your number popped up. We have a client here. Can you help us in their healing process? And then one of them was Karima saying, hey, I Googled and found you guys. What can we do? And then after Karima, we connected with Paul. And then we had one more, Stephen, who we connected with, and he's from the Department of Corrections, and said, hey, this is going on, and we need to find resources to be able to support a lot of survivors that are popping up with not enough resources in this area.
So last time when we were here with Paul, we were describing what we were teaching the local Olympia first responders about. So we basically showed them a model of how we do the work we do in Spokane so that they could do that here as well. And in the meantime, if there are pieces missing here, we can fill in those gaps with them through our support and just connections and just ability for me to coach someone through the process if they're already a first responder or caseworker. So pretty amazing God connections completely. So we thought, oh, we need to go to Olympia. Mm-hmm. So first, I wanted to cover the fact that the biggest tool that the traffickers use is fear. It's not actually action. So they scare their victims into thinking that they will hurt them. They often don't hurt them. They're just threatening them with the idea because they don't want to risk their criminal career for just one person. So especially if you're seeing or meeting this client like at a coffee shop or just a kind of quick interaction and the person is already in public, you're pretty safe to quietly go about, asking them a question or just passing them our number on a Post-it. And in Spokane, we do have small, what we call our resource cards, and it's half the size of a business card that we slip to people that you're not even having to do the thinking in the moment. You could simply pass the card and say, hey, you look like you need some help. Call these guys. They might have some answers for you. But you were more focusing also on what it looks like in the moment? Is that what you were saying? Yeah. I'm just saying that I always think of it like the movies. Right. So again, it's kind of, we do training for our advocates and anyone involved that wants to know what those first questions look like when you approach somebody. So we'd love to share that with you guys at some point if you're interested. But we are very cautious, if it's one of us anyway, to make sure that the surroundings are safe. There doesn't look like there's someone following them. But there's nothing wrong, again, a trafficker isn't gonna come after you or that person in any more of an intense way just because you walked up to them and said, hey, do you need a bottle of water? Something like that. And in the first 2 years, I would say, we had a high amount of those immediate relocation needs, the more movie type scenarios that you guys are asking about. And then in maybe good reasons, those calls started lessening and we started becoming more visible in the community so that clients could call themselves instead of waiting for that emergency moment where they needed to be picked up right now. So again, we still do get those calls. They're very, I would say like 2% of our calls are emergency. Now they are very much planned if we are going to pick up a client from an unsafe situation. And so we back up all of our operations with a safety plan. Does that kind of help? So yeah, people always ask us, in the movies, does that stuff really happen too? And we say yes. So don't let the media kind of sway you in your understanding. Those things happen too. The van happens, chains, alcohol, things like that. Those are true stories after helping over 400 women and children that we have heard. But it's not the majority. It's most of the trafficking is underneath your nose, at the local club, in the local hotel, and honestly, any empty house. In the woods or in the city, it doesn't matter. They've also been in affluent neighborhoods. So there's so many tiers of different types of trafficking.
Yeah, and a lot of what we're dealing with is low-level gang involvement, and there's so much moving around, and it's a different motel every night and a different trap house every day, and it's living it up and it's partying and da-da-da, and that's where they're using the victims at. But if one of them decides to go to a gas station and have one of us pick them up, they might not even notice for a while. I mean, they're very out of it, so it's less of a like high authority gang member operation and more of just a lot of moving around, a lot of partying and scary stuff, but not high intensity in that aspect.
Has your partnership with law enforcement led to some positive outcomes in terms of ridding the public space from some of those traffickers?
You mean like lessening the amount of victims that are identified? We have done some major important work since 2014 by educating the police department on what people are enduring on the streets. Because you would think that officers have this type of training, they don't. I know this sounds wild, but there's only specific units that get specific training against sexual exploitation. And even in Spokane, at one point we had 2, and that was not enough. They have stacks of cases and no way to help the victim besides immediate recovery. And then they don't even know where to take them. Even if they put a child or a woman into their police car, the police officer has no idea what is best for this person. And that's where we come in to explain and share what's going on for the minds of those human beings, and also what is best practice. What should we set up in our city so that this isn't just happening over and over again and then people aren't finding resources. We would love to have a more heavy protocol created. But just to give you an example, I mean, we literally have someone on our Jonah Project board that works with the police department, and he advocates for us all the time. And like I said, we've been preaching this message since 2014. We're not there yet. That's how long this conversation takes in order for things to get lined up the way that we need them to be. And honestly, some of it is just really about each and every person in the police department knowing the signs of trafficking and giving it their extra 2 minutes to do the right thing for that person, instead of saying, all right, you're free to go. And where are they free to go to? Are they really free? Not so much. Yes, Karima. Yes, there are quite a few ministries specific that minister to traffickers or people who have been the victimizers or who suffer from illness and mental health scenarios that lead them to this type of behavior. So we can definitely pray for them too. We've had a couple calls from people who have like left the prison system and said, you know, I'm so sorry for what I did and I have since healed. And I think what you're doing is so important, and just really almost apologizing to us, and but really sharing a perspective of, yeah, you guys are right. You're doing the right thing. You're teaching people how to stay safe against stuff that I used to do. So, but there's need for support in you know, all parts of our community, because they didn't. Well, what we like to say is nobody grows up and says, I want to be a pimp or trafficker. Like when they're 5, nobody says that. Something has happened to them to lead them to that type of behavior also. And groomers groom others to do their work also. So traffickers are always up to that. If they see someone is capable of that type of work, they will hone in on them and hope that they can ask them to join the team.
And Karima, if we had so many more advocates and so many more staff, we would have an absolutely epic branch of Jonah Project that would be proactive, preventative for at-risk, generally young men who would be traffickers. But for now, we kind of only have capacity to pay attention to who God kind of plucks into our lap. So we have a couple at-risk kiddos who we support, who we just ordered documentation for. He had no proof that he existed as a human in the world. And he just said, I can't get a real job because I don't have a social security, I don't have a birth certificate. He had nothing. And so what can you do when you can't get a real job and have to make money? You either sell drugs or run girls. And so we helped him get his birth certificate, get his social, and he's holding a real life job, like in construction now, doing great things. So that's what that would look like, working in the high schools, working with kiddos who, well, if they're not gonna grow up and be trafficked, they could be a trafficker. So, yeah.
Do I understand you correctly, if someone were to randomly get one of your half business cards and give you a call and they were from Olympia, there is no one like your organization in Olympia that you would just say, oh yeah, call this group, correct?
Yes, that is why we're here. Unfortunately, even all the way up to the Seattle area, my team and I were frantically searching one day for resources for a survivor, and we called over 20 places in Seattle area. No, sorry, we have no space. Okay, who should I call? Not sure, good luck, sorry. No one answered. So that is why we are here, and that is why, yes, that is why we're looking to grow. You're right.
Okay, and so then, are you familiar with the Trony Foundation?
No, but we'd love for you to share with us. No, haven't heard of them, but please do share.
Oh, well, they somehow, I mean, I'm not that familiar with them, but I know that they're located in Lacey and they work in human trafficking, but I think it might be more on the legislative level. And so I was wondering if you kind of were more on like the boots on the ground and they were doing more legislative work, or I didn't know.
Yes, we would love to put those pieces together and connect. You should give us that name after so we can write it down and contact them.
Just the human beings first.
Yeah. I guess connected with law enforcement too, we have to be human being first centered and victim centered. And so oftentimes with law enforcement, like Parfait was asking, we just have to kind of let it go, give it up to God of, well, that's not where we're called to be. We're called to serve our clients with everything we have and with our whole heart. And we hope and pray that legislation changes and that authorities are changing. It's just a slow process. So we do the humans, they can do the rest.
Oh, so you're kind of asking about if you were, or someone was interested in being a host home to one of our clients. So we provide a special training per whatever special role that you have in Jonah. And specific to host home, we're in person meeting you at your house and doing a walkthrough. And we pretty much follow the same state guidelines that are out there because I come from state service. So that's where my guidelines come from, to follow all those rules. And really equip the family emotionally and financially, even sometimes, to take on that extra person. And we don't ever expect the host home to do all of the services and care and support for that person. Sometimes families can only provide that extra bedroom, but the family is so busy with their own work or family and children that we are asking other volunteers to plug in and be different supports for that person, such as someone's in charge of everything having to do with school for that client, or someone's in charge of everything having to do with her mental health therapies that are going on. So just adding as many safe people into that person's life and through the host home experience has been so productive, so amazing. And as you can imagine, homes are better for humans than facilities, even more so than these healing programs. They may be a good first step for lots of our clients, but truly that love and care and compassion that's individualized from just humans like you, and we did it ourselves, it's what people need to break those barriers and grow into the full human that they are.
And then to speak to kind of the safeguarding, we would never place a client with a family or with a host home unless we trusted that that client was not going to bring dangerous people or drugs or anything around that house. So when we first meet a client, we never take them to one of the houses. They'll stay in a more neutral setting, maybe one of their friends' houses, a safe friend or a homeless shelter or something like that, until we say, oh, okay, we can trust you and we know that you're not going to we can be mostly sure that you're not going to bring violence into a home or anything like that. And of course, we're always there to support if things do go, aren't the best fit anymore for a host family and a client. And I think
I just like to make one statement here. You know, we do live in this fallen and broken world, but the significant issue of sex trafficking, the underlying problem is the pandemic of pornography in this country. And it's a supply and demand issue. You take the idolatry of pornography away, and we're not going to do that in this fallen and broken world, but it feeds porn. There's 3 to 4 million porn sites in this world. 30 to 40% of all internet traffic is porn. The biggest user of porn is 11 and 12-year-old boys. Older guys do it a lot too. In fact, 60 to 76% of the men in the evangelical conservative church struggle with porn. 50 to 58% of the pastors, according to Pure Desire International, Ted Roberts, who himself struggled at one time, became a very noted pastor, reaches out to pastors and people today. But you know, we really need to start addressing that issue in the body of Christ, and churches really don't always address that issue as they should.
Bring it.
You're completely correct, and thank you for sharing that. Maybe I could send Paul the link, but a few years back,
my husband, who's our founder, spoke specifically at an anti-pornography huge conference at Gonzaga University, and that is on YouTube, so you guys could take a look and listen. Amazing, groundbreaking research has been done on linking pornography to trafficking, and just it's eye-opening for all of us to know how the brain works and how we're all affected by these things. So thank you, thank you. Oh, one more question, yeah. First of all, you were amazing and brave. Thank you for your question. So, yeah, thank you for letting God talk to your heart and then talk to the next safe person that you can speak to, which would be maybe your teacher or your principal, like you said, and tell them, hey, I think I have a friend or I have a question about this that this person might use some help with. And hopefully they could call the Jonah Project. And we could come teach kids, no matter how old they are, about how to stay safe. And that would be doing amazing work. And so you're already an advocate now for the Jonah Project. Doesn't matter how old you are. You're doing it. Good job.
So I don't want to be the person who ends all the fun. I'm just here to be the one that says we get a chance to eat dinner and ask more questions. So thank you so much for coming and for sharing. Yeah. So I do hope that you all can stay. And I want to invite the worship team to come up. And so I think, yeah, in some ways my thought was, is it good or weird or hard for us to end with worship? But I think in light of what we've been talking about and hearing, we need to refocus our hearts and minds on Jesus, believing that he is good news. There is hope in our world, that evil and sin does not get the last word. But there is one who has laid down his life to bring hope to us, to those who would traffic, and to those who would be victims. We all would stand in need of his grace. And so this is not meant to be a hard turn away, but it meant to be in light of what we have talked about, in light of what we are focusing on, in light of what we're asking here. Our hope is Jesus, and that we get to be then the hands and feet of Jesus here in this world. So I just encourage you to get a chance to sing now. We're also going to take communion. Communion is open here for those that know and love Jesus. So if you have not yet gotten the chance to grab the elements, they're here at the front. We're going to sing a couple songs. So after the second song together, we're going to get a chance to take the elements again and be reminded of Christ's body broken, his blood shed for us. So once you stand, if you're able to stand, let's sing a few songs and worship the one who is worthy to be praised.
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope. Restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. God, as we sit and stand here just with the heaviness of what we've been talking about tonight, we're here knowing and believing that though we all chose to sin and break away from your plans, and that has led to so many brokennesses, so many pains in this world that we experience, that others experience because of it, that even so, God, you had a plan to redeem and restore. And God, we know you did not leave this created world to be lost in brokenness, but you came. You showed that you love us, God, and we look forward to the full restoration that you promise in the future, that there's no brokenness beyond your redemption, nothing beyond your reach, God. Of heaven, you stepped down to earth, innocent perfection. You gave your life for us, and we are amazed. We stand in awe, for we have been changed by the power of the cross. How great, how great, how great is your love. How great is your love? How great, how great, how great is your love for us? never been, and there will never be a God like you, a love so true. There's never been, there will never be a God like you, a love so true. There's never been, there will never be a God like you, a love so true. How great, how great, how great is your love. How great, how great, how great is your love. How great, how great, how great is your love for us. How great, how great, how great is your love. How great, how great, how great is your love. How great, how great, how great is your love for us. How great is your love for
So my table group, as well as my friend Heather, have been encouraging me and challenging me and praying for me to spend some time during my week really meditating on pieces of God's word and asking God like how he wants to encourage me and what he wants to call me into. And I came across Psalm 66 this last couple weeks, verse 20. And it says, "Blessed be God, because he's not rejected my prayer or removed his steadfast love from me." And in another version it says, "or withheld his love from me." And that has been really challenging me as I go to work every day and work with kids, some that have really hard stories, that I don't have to withhold anything from them, because nothing's been withheld from me. And so tonight I get to celebrate with you, family, that Jesus broke his body for us because he didn't withhold anything from us. And we also get to celebrate together that Jesus poured out his blood for us because God withheld nothing from us.
I cast my mind to Calvary, where Jesus bled and died for me. I see his wounds, his hands, his feet, my Savior on that cursed tree. His body bound and drenched in tears, they laid him down in Joseph's tomb, the entrance sealed by heavy stone, Messiah still and all alone. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore. For endless days we will sing your praise. Oh, Lord our God. Oh, praise his name forevermore The blazing sun shall pierce the night, and I will rise among the saints, my gaze transfixed on Jesus' face.
I just want to say thanks again to Bindi and Michelina for coming. We hope that you are able to stay and join us for dinner tonight. We're going to get the food started. I mean, it's out there now. We're going to eat for a few minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions again. But if you can't stay, we understand as well. So may you walk this week in the hope of God's redemptive work and plan. That He is the one who heals, and He is the one who restores, and He is the one who redeems, and He is the one who is making all things new. May you go now in His love and in His peace and the power of His Holy Spirit to love and bless others in His name. And we'll see you guys next week. Enjoy dinner.